This story is titled, My Husband Still Talks to His Ex Every Week and Dismisses My Concerns Whenever I Bring It Up. I never thought I'd be the kind of wife who felt threatened by another woman. I always believed that trust was the foundation of a strong marriage, and for a long time, I thought my husband, Daniel, and I had exactly that. My name is Linda, and I'm 54 years old. I live in Ohio with Daniel, my husband of 12 years. We have a good life, or at least, I thought we did. A quiet, predictable life. He works as an architect, and I run a small business from home. We never had kids, but that never bothered me. Daniel was my partner, my best friend. I thought we were unshakable. Then his ex came back into the picture. Her name is Teresa. They were together for nearly a decade before things ended. According to Daniel, it was mutual. She wanted different things, and he had already started drifting away from the relationship. He made it sound so simple, so clean. But what he didn't tell me, what I had to figure out on my own, was that their connection never really ended. It started subtly, a text here, a phone call there. He'd mention her in passing, his tone casual, like it was no big deal. At first, I told myself I was being silly. After all, people stay in touch with their exes all the time, right? But then the texts became more frequent. The phone calls started happening every week, and suddenly, I wasn't so sure anymore. One evening, while we were watching TV, his phone buzzed. I glanced over and saw her name on the screen. He picked up the phone quickly, smiling as he answered. "Hey, Teresa, what's up?" I felt something tighten in my chest. He didn't talk to anyone else that way, not even me. I tried to ignore it. I really did. But the next morning, as he was getting ready for work, I finally spoke up. "Daniel, I've noticed you've been talking to Teresa a lot lately." He barely looked at me as he buttoned his shirt. "Yeah? So?" I swallowed. "It just seems frequent." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Linda, it's nothing. We're just friends. You know that." Friends. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to be the cool, understanding wife who didn't get jealous over something as small as a phone call. But something about the way he dismissed me so easily, so effortlessly, left a knot in my stomach. Over the next few weeks, I tried to let it go. But I couldn't. Not when I'd see his phone light up with her name. Not when he'd step outside to take her calls, speaking in hushed tones. And then, one night, I woke up around midnight to find the bed empty beside me. I got up, groggy, and padded down the hall. That's when I heard his voice, low, quiet. I followed the sound to his office, where the door was slightly ajar. He was on the phone. With her. I held my breath, listening. "You always knew me better than anyone," he said, his voice warm. "I miss talking to you like this." My heart stopped. Miss talking to her? I must have made a noise because he turned, spotting me standing in the doorway. His face went pale. "Linda." I didn't wait for an explanation. I turned on my heel and walked straight to our bedroom. A few seconds later, he was right behind me. "Linda, it's not what you think." I spun around. "Not what I think?" "Daniel, I just heard you tell her you miss talking to her." He sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "It's just a figure of speech. We were catching up, that's all. Catching up. At midnight." Whispering. I crossed my arms. "If it's nothing, why did you step out of bed to talk to her?" His jaw tightened. "I didn't want to wake you. Liar." His eyes flashed with something, anger, guilt. I couldn't tell. "You're making a big deal out of nothing, Linda," he said, exasperated. "I don't have feelings for Teresa. She's part of my past, that's all." "If she's part of your past, why is she in your present?" Silence. That was the moment I realized he didn't have an answer. I turned away, climbing into bed, pulling the covers over me. He didn't try to talk anymore. He just stood there for a long moment before finally leaving the room. The next morning, he acted like nothing happened. I, on the other hand, felt like I was losing my mind. I started paying closer attention, watching the way his phone never left his side. Noticing how he never let me see his screen. And then, one afternoon when he was in the shower, I made a decision. I picked up his phone. His password was the same as always. My hands trembled as I unlocked it. I didn't have to look far. There, right at the top of his messages, was her name. Teresa. I clicked on it, and what I saw shattered me. "I miss you too. Wish we could talk like this forever. Do you ever think about us? About what could have been?" And the worst one. The one that made my stomach drop. Maybe in another life, things would have been different. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. My hands were ice cold. I scrolled up, scanning the conversation, my heart pounding. They reminisced about old memories, shared inside jokes, talked about things he never mentioned to me. And yet, he swore it was nothing. I put the phone down just as I heard the water shut off. My pulse raced as I hurried back to the kitchen, pretending I hadn't just uncovered a truth I could never unsee. A few minutes later, Daniel walked in, toweling his hair. "Hey, what's for dinner?" I stared at him, my chest tightening. How could he act so normal? How could he look at me like I was his world, while texting her like she was the one he truly missed? I cleared my throat. "Actually, I need to talk to you." He hesitated. "Okay." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I saw your messages with Teresa." His whole body stiffened. The towel in his hand dropped to the counter. "What?" I forced myself to hold his gaze. "I saw them, Daniel. The things you've been saying to her. The things she's been saying to you." His face paled. "Linda, you..." "Don't lie to me," I cut him off, my voice shaking. "I know everything." A long silence stretched between us. Then, finally, he sighed, running a hand through his damp hair. "I never meant for it to get complicated." I let out a bitter laugh. "Complicated? Daniel, you're having emotional conversations with your ex behind my back. You tell her things you don't tell me. Do you have any idea how that makes me feel?" His eyes filled with something. Regret? Guilt? "It's not what you think, Linda. I love you." "Then why does it feel like you love her?" Silence. That silence was my answer. Tears burned my eyes as I stepped back. "I can't do this, Daniel. I won't be the second choice in my own marriage." He reached for me, but I shook my head. I had been patient, I had been understanding, but I wasn't going to be a fool. Not anymore. Daniel didn't leave that night. He slept in the guest room, though I doubted he got much rest. I didn't either. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, feeling my world tilt under the weight of what I'd discovered. The next morning, he was already in the kitchen when I walked in. Coffee brewed, toast sat untouched on a plate, and Daniel stood at the counter, gripping his mug like it was the only thing grounding him. He looked up when he saw me. "Linda, can we talk?" I sat down, exhaling slowly. "Talk, then." He hesitated. "I never wanted to hurt you." I scoffed. "That's a funny thing to say when you've been lying to me for months." His eyes flinched, but I didn't care. I was past caring about his feelings when he clearly hadn't cared about mine. I wasn't lying. "Stop," I cut him off, my voice sharper than I intended. "Stop pretending this is nothing. I read your messages, Daniel. Maybe in another life, things would have been different? That doesn't sound like friendly conversation to me." He sighed, setting his coffee down. "I was reminiscing." "Reminiscing?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Is that what we're calling emotional cheating now?" His head snapped up. "That's not what this is." I leaned forward. "Then tell me, Daniel, if Teresa showed up right now, if she said she wanted to be with you, would you hesitate?" He opened his mouth, closed it, looked away. That was all the answer I needed. I felt a sharp sting in my chest, but I refused to let it show. That's what I thought. His shoulders sagged. "Linda, I don't want to lose you." I swallowed hard. "Then you should have thought about that before you kept her in our marriage." Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Finally, he spoke. "I'll cut contact." I studied him, my heart twisting. "Because you want to? Or because you don't want to lose what's comfortable?" His jaw tightened. "I love you. But do you respect me?" His expression flickered. I nodded, standing up. "That's what I thought." I didn't need to hear anything else, because I already knew. I walked away, feeling more certain than ever. This wasn't the marriage I deserved, and for the first time I was ready to walk away. If this story resonated with you, like, comment, and subscribe. Have you ever faced something like this? Let me know your thoughts below.